So welcome, here we are, episode 1. We are talking about business, talking about how to think about business, how to overcome the hurdles that many business owners experience along the journey, the setbacks that they experience as they start, but also as they scale, and what that looks like in year 1 and year 5 and 10, and what this looks like individually, but also as a bigger conversation within multiple industries. And myself and Micah here come from 2 different industries, but we're trying to bring the 2 together so that we can kind of go through the concepts that are popular, but also the concepts that are tried and true, and what this looks like at the intersection of business and purpose and the kingdom of God, and how we're thinking through all of those things. So
there's a lot of overlap. We both have totally different businesses to an extent, but we're applying very similar principles along the way. In some cases, the same principles along the way, and that doesn't necessarily change because you have a service style company, or whether you have some other kind of company. Of course, all companies are providing a service, but he's accounting. I'm many different things. It's actually so is he, but yeah, there's similarities. There are things that are tried and true, like he said, and we want to discuss those things to a certain extent. We want to do a start to finish. Here's the process of starting a business. Here's what you need to know, but also here are the things that you should implement up front, right when you start. Ironically, Cameron was a big part of that for one of my businesses that I started up. He was one of the first things we implemented in our business, and probably the best thing we did. And we're going to talk a lot about that. Cameron's going to have a lot to talk about in that respect because he's seen a lot of stuff in his line of work.
So we work with about 60 clients on a monthly basis for bookkeeping across several industries. A lot of probably half are more blue collar service based industries, and then the other half are mixes of real estate and retail and all kinds of things, even like online manufacturing, distribution, and things like that across the country. And so, we as we met and talked through not just your accounting, but just business in general, there's just a lot of bad ideas out there. Mm-hmm. And the more something like, YouTube and TikTok, become so much of the norm, the more content creators are going on there, talking about how to do business, how to think about business, and what that should look like for the everyday entrepreneur.
Right.
And yet the experience that they have when they go out there and start what they're doing is oftentimes a lot different. And I know for me in the past, it's kind of left an empty void in what the actual experience is versus what they say it should be. Yeah. And so we wanted to kind of meet at the intersection of, like I always say, at the intersection of blue collar and white collar, because there are aspects of, some things that Micah does in the construction renovation industry that, if you don't meet the blue collar of doing the work of it, and the white collar of the back end, back office admin and operations, then you really end up in a situation where you can do the work,
right,
and yet you can't do the business,
right,
and the business isn't going well, even though the work's going great. And so a lot of times what we notice is that so many businesses have that disconnect where, that guy's been blessed so much with the ability to build houses, and yet his finances are an absolute wreck, or he can't pay the bills, or he can't make the next payment because it just doesn't manage the business well on the other side.
And he doesn't have enough metrics, enough data to create metrics so that he knows what he's losing, when he's losing it, how he's losing it. And so, he can't pay the bills, but he also doesn't realize that, he's only making 1% above payroll. And so that's why he's not making any money. But he doesn't even know that because he doesn't have enough data, because he hasn't hired a bookkeeper who can take all this information, assign it to projects, assign it to job POs, so that they know, well, there it is. I'm actually not even charging enough, or we're losing money is just liquidating through inventory, surplus inventory, which is a big deal in our line of work. All of our inventories at our shop, or at our home, or in our garage, or wherever, and all of a sudden we need something, so we go to Home Depot or Lowe's because it's closer to us than our shop, and to a certain extent that makes sense. But we're not inventorying our jobs, so we don't even know what we need necessarily. And when we do need something, it's not available, it's not there, or maybe it's under a pile of junk because we're not organized. So our bookkeeper has a lot of that data to know, well, what happened to all this stuff? You didn't use all this stuff. What happened to it? And you say, well, this is just draining out, or or hours, or whatever. Labor is a big deal. But
Yeah, whether you're hiring 1099, W-2, whatever that looks like.
yeah.
Because I've heard I've heard clients say before that they went from W-2 to 1099 because the guys would get to the job site and clock in, and then make a list of everything they need at Home Depot, and then go get it. And by the time they get back, they get about an hour of work done, and then go to lunch, and then get back and do another hour or two of work, and then realize they need something else and have to go get it, and then come back. And he's like, I'm only paying these guys. I'm paying these guys for a full day, and yet they're only getting 3 hours of work done because there's this all this back and forth.
So there's a lot of inefficiencies in business, and we'll talk about. There's a book called Profit First. Fantastic book by Mike Michalowicz. Highly recommend that book. And he talks about efficiency and setting up your books and everything in a way that you know what's going on within your company. But then he also is trying to get you to be creative in how to save and other things. And we'll talk about a lot of that stuff, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially depending like the guests that we bring on.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we want to do is we want to have this type of conversation with real business owners that are solving real problems, just like we are, and try to understand how they're thinking through what that next phase looks like and what the next step is. And especially when you're considering that first startup and that first year, and especially today, and we want to talk about a little bit about where we come from and how we got started, and what that process was like for both of us. And one of the things that's frustrating, I guess, to an extent, is that we care a lot about entrepreneurs, and they've got families, and they've got to pay the bills, and they ultimately they're just trying to make it. And when you're trying to make it and trying to provide for your family, and you've got all of these voices in your head trying to push you to this 10x or whatever the phrase is, and not to
not to point anyone out,
not to point anybody else or really down what they're saying. But I think a lot of this business hype is really used the wrong way on the consumer side.
Yeah.
To where it's made into something that it shouldn't be.
Right.
Where you hear things like, man, if we could just get to $1 million. Like, okay, great. What does that mean though? What does $1 million mean?
Yeah.
Because for my business, $1 million means, my gosh, I mean, the typical accounting or bookkeeping business is probably in the 50% profit margin.
Right.
Once you actually implement like employees and like,
Yeah.
really scale up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that means a lot. That means something a lot different for somebody in my
Right.
industry than it does for somebody in
Right.
yours. So
Absolutely.
$1 million in your industry is not going to look like $500,000 in your pocket at the end of the day.
Right.
So what does that actually mean?
Right.
If you're shooting,
Definitely.
yeah, if you're shooting for a goal or shooting for a finish line,
Right.
it should be a finish line that matters
Yeah.
to your family and to
Yep.
your freedom and to
Right.
your sanity.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, it has to be realistic,
absolutely,
and it can't, you mentioned 10x and all this kind of stuff, and in your industry, these things mean totally different things. And I will say this, and this is something we're going to talk about along the way, is you need to know what your own limitations are.
absolutely,
Like if you want to hit a certain, if I shouldn't even say hit a certain thing. It's really if you want to have some peace in your business and in your family, that requires you to be at a certain point. And we are all limited to some extent or another. And some of us are limited in management. We're just not managers. Some of us are not limited in that area, but we're limited in realism. You know, people who are very, very visionary and optimistic struggle with hanging on to their money, and they struggle with succeeding. They usually succeed in their goal, but they leave a train wreck behind them. I mean, you've cleaned this stuff up before, right?
oh yeah,
And
absolutely,
I've been in those businesses before. I've worked for people like that. I'm not. I can't handle that kind of mess. That's why I have people like Cameron working for me. But that's a real thing, and you need to know yourself. You need to be honest, transparent, if you want to actually make leaps forward.
yeah,
I
because it's all. I mean, no matter what industry you're in, I mean, there are like all of these dials that set the limitation of either it's financial,
Yeah.
and not everybody has the finances or budget to
No.
just jump out
Yeah.
and just go after
Yeah.
something. And then others don't have the time,
Yeah.
and others don't have, like you said, the abilities on one side or the other,
Yeah.
vocationally, to actually implement
Right.
all of these things that we're talking
Right.
about. And like understanding where you're at and what that limitation
Right.
is exactly what you have to do in order to be able to put the right things in place and scale or
Yep.
get to a place of freedom, which is, kind of some of the things that I'm considering and me and my wife are considering is like, what does this even look like?
Yeah.
Because when we started, we didn't really have I mean, all I knew is I was going to get clients. I'm that visionary, leaving just a trail of like, I don't even know what this looks like, but we're
Yeah.
just going after it,
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
kind of mentality. And you know, especially, and I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a few minutes. But like having a full time job, just going out there trying to get the next
Yeah.
client
Yeah.
and helping the next business. It's like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Because now
Right.
it means something a lot different than it did 2 years
Yeah.
ago, while we were kind of starting to scale up a little bit. And now it looks a lot more like, how do I get some time back? How do I get some freedom? And how do we, manage the expenses
Right.
of a growing accounting business that, has exponentially gotten more expensive to run as we've grown and we're bringing money in. Well, that means that there's a percentage of that money going
Right.
out always.
Right.
And maybe not always, but I
Yeah.
mean, to get to the next level, sometimes you have to like spend some more money. So
Right, right,
when we
right.
got to the point of like, what does software look like? What
Yeah.
does an actual management system look like?
Yeah.
And just doing some of the things that we had put on the back burner
Mm-hmm.
personally, like in our own budget, and so, yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot to think to.
So, just to move things forward a little bit, let's talk about you. I mean, we haven't even, I used your name just now and I realized we haven't even told people who we are. Of course, you know, they've heard renovation, they've heard bookkeeping, so they kind of know what we do. Although, you know, for me, I have a couple different things I'm involved in besides renovation, but that's what you're most familiar with
Sure.
because you do my books for that. But let's talk about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about how you got there.
Yeah. So,
Because that's a big deal, I think, for most people. Most people is, I want to do this, but I'm terrified and I don't know how to make that next step. So, you know, give us the backstory.
oh man, how far do you want to go back?
Well,
So,
I mean, let's go back.
yeah, well,
We got as much time as
yeah,
we
yeah,
want, right?
yeah. So, like I had said a few minutes ago, I mean, I've always been driven by that kind of visionary, entrepreneurial mindset. And early on in my career, I got into sales and business development and marketing and, all of those things. And I went to a little bit of college for that. And ultimately just worked in restaurants and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
all of those types of roles that you would imagine,
yeah.
while I was going through college.
Sure.
And so launched out into sales and business development, really cut my teeth on, being put into a department or a section of the company where, you know, I've either got to make it happen and make it work, and I've got to scale, and I've got to, go out and get some sales,
Right.
or I'm going to have to go find something else to do.
Yeah.
For one reason or another, and I kind of know what those reasons are, but why they put me in that, position.
Yeah.
But, you know, ultimately those were the cards I was dealt.
Right.
And looking back, at the time it was like, why are you doing this to me? What did I do? Whatever. But the experience during those seasons are exactly what made me be able to do what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
So was working for another company, trying to grow as much as I can, really commission based, job. So after 4 years, you really kind of get comfortable with what you're doing. And so reached a ceiling where it really wasn't going to grow anymore. I didn't have any more time in my day. I wasn't in management. I wasn't at a point I
Yeah.
couldn't hire underneath me. And so kind of thinking through things the way that I did, it's like the only way to scale, the only way to get anywhere further than I am right now, because I have no more time in my day. I actually have, I'm working at night. I'm working, after hours, trying to get everything done. So you can hire underneath you,
Right.
have somebody else do the things that are really falling off of your plate. You can charge more money, which only works a little.
Right. Right.
There's gonna be there's a ceiling on that too.
Yeah.
Or I can go find an industry that isn't dependent on me selling the next thing, but has a little bit more of the residual, where I can actually grow something that's
Right.
that's providing an income, and I can somewhat control that.
Yeah.
And so naturally the insurance industry was that landing point, because at the time, I was connecting with a State Farm agent, where we were going to go into a program that was about 18 months long, that you kind of learn learn how to operate an insurance agency. And during that time you have to obviously sell enough to where they recognize that you can do this, and then you go start one, or you go take over somebody else's office as they either retire or pass away, or whatever
Right.
that situation is. So went into that for about 10 months. And so 10 months out of an 18-month program.
Wow.
And realized this industry isn't necessarily for everybody,
Right.
but also it was a really tough market for that insurance company. And so I was at a point where I was losing every sale to all of the independent insurance guys, that could either place your policy with Travelers or, all these
Yeah,
different
yeah, yeah,
companies.
yeah.
And so I went and started an independent insurance agency,
Yeah.
thinking, man, I'm going to take over the world. And so for the next, I don't know, for the next year or so, a little bit more than a
Yeah.
year, tried everything that I could to get that off the ground.
Huh.
And, went back to the same thing where, I mean, not every industry is for everybody.
Yeah.
Because if I could duplicate the sales, like the experience that I had, with the moving company, into the insurance industry, I mean, everything would have been fine. It would have
Yeah.
been great. But wasn't able to do that.
Right.
And so I see that same thing happen with a lot of different guys that go into that industry, is that, it's almost like, I mean, gosh, I don't want to, I want to be careful how I say this, because I don't want somebody to get mad, but it's almost the same set, like tactics of like MLMs,
Yeah.
where they're selling you, trying to get you into this position where, my gosh, you can sell, you can grow as much as you want, and like you sell more, and then whatever.
And the worst thing they say is anybody can do it.
Oh yeah. Anybody can do it.
Anybody, yeah.
If you like, and I had people tell me that, they're like,
Yeah.
if you tell me how much you want to make, and I'll tell you what to do. I'll tell you how many phone calls to make. I'll tell you how, all of these different things, all these different, metrics that if you just do these things,
Yeah.
everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. Well, it wasn't great. And so I did all the things. I did all the things that I was supposed to do, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so I'm really thankful for that, because I was not ready for that type of responsibility at the time, and that type of, I was coming out of a place where I was the sales guy, I was the visionary, I was the guy going out there trying to hunt and kill,
Right.
kind of concept, and really I didn't deal with the back end stuff. I didn't deal with the admin things, and so I didn't really have much of a concept of what that actually took, and so balancing both sides was a huge limiting factor on what I was able to do and accomplish in that, because I knew how to do one side of it and I didn't really know how to do the other.
Right.
And so trying to learn that along the way before eventually, selling that book of business and like just moving on, was kind of a pivotal moment, because it showed me that not everything is worth it.
Right.
I mean, and at a certain point, it takes a humility to say, if this isn't going well, I've got my family, I've got bills, I've got the house, like we're going to, we'll lose everything if I don't make, a change here. And so, really burned out of that industry, just that whole, experience.
So, quick question about that.
Yeah.
Because some people were doing really well in that area. What conclusion did you come to that was like, this is not what I should be doing?
Yeah, I mean, so every industry has its own unique nuances.
Right.
And so I think for me, the issue that I had was, I had never really seen how it was done properly.
Huh.
And so I saw, and not to say that the people I was working for weren't doing good, like they weren't running things the way that they should have, but coming out of a company that only sold for one insurance company, and like didn't really have a lot of opportunity to see how things should be done properly.
Right.
And so I just jumped into the thing that I thought, like I jumped into where I wanted to be eventually.
Right.
Instead of realizing that to get there is going to take a process. There's going to be a process to get there.
Yeah.
And so if I would have pivoted from there into an independent insurance agency that was a lot more fit to who I was, and kind of like my personality and those kind of things, and worked with the type of clients that were going to be, really good for me to work with and be able to help, I think it would have gone better.
Yeah.
Because even after selling my book of business, I worked for the company that I sold it to for another year,
Yeah.
and they were great. I loved the people that I worked with, and I learned a lot about you know like managing the whole agency and all of those things while I was there. But again, it was really suit and tie, really high level CEO type of clients that they were really looking for. And I mean, me coming from Asheville,
Yeah.
little hippie town, you know, kind of thing, and like tattoos and like all,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
stuff. Like it just wasn't what
Yeah.
it was not for me. That wasn't necessarily the type of client that I should have been going for.
I think
And
that's really important for people to hear
yeah,
because I think a lot of times we chase after something that isn't really who we are. Not to sound cliche,
right.
like, chase your dreams or whatever. And not that there's anything wrong with doing that. But I think a lot of times, it's kind of cliche to say you need to be who you are. But I think that there are two aspects, two things you said that I was reminded of. One is things don't always look the same on the front end as they do on the back end. Someone's success, what you see on social media, or you hear about somebody who's making a lot of money doing what they're doing, can a lot of times be very deceptive. And I mean, you're a bookkeeper, so you know this. You've
Oh yeah.
seen this before. On the front end, on the face of it, somebody looks like they're killing it. But then you find out when you're on the back end, and I have a lot of experience with this actually, people I've worked for, where it's like, wow, they've got a real good thing going here. And then I started working for them. I realized they had a terrible thing going for them. And usually it was them. They were their biggest enemy.
Right.
Again, something that we'll talk about later is going to be your your best assets are the things that are going to tear you down in the long run as well.
Yeah, every gift has an alternate like
Ego.
downside.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you've got this superpower over here, and that
yeah.
same superpower is going to drag you down if you don't know how to deal with it
Right.
and use it properly, and then use other people who are kind of the antithesis of the superpower. Because every, the and I see this in my own business. My tendencies, I have these real strengths, and then my tendencies are the things that get messed up. And I've had a partner who's fantastic with things that I don't like, and I don't like them mostly because they stress me, and and so using a person, it doesn't have to be a partner, it can be an employee, and trusting their skills and their abilities, their superpower, and letting them use that in a good way is as much a part of it as it is, using your own superpower, but not letting it overcome your business, which is what I've seen a lot of. Is, I have this great thing. I'm a visionary. I make things happen and I push through, but a lot of times guys like that especially have to keep pushing in order to keep the business alive. They're literally running away from the chaos behind them because that is trying to swallow them up. So
Absolutely.
it's like, I got to get this next job so that we can pay, the bills for all this other chaos I've created. And so they just push forward and don't look back. And if they're lucky, they have somebody working with them that they can work side by side, and the other person makes sure that the chaos doesn't follow. But so that was the first thing you were talking about, people that you were working for, and I was sitting there thinking that probably what you saw in their success was different after you had seen how they ran their business. And then the second thing was just, again, knowing yourself really well. Like
Yeah.
knowing eventually this is not for me. I've known other people who work in insurance that ended up there because it's what they could get.
Yeah.
Now, yours is a little different, but one of my buddies was in insurance, was miserable the whole time and wanted to get out of it. He tried a couple times with different things, but it was what he had at the time. And,
Yeah.
if you have a family, that has a way of kind of just almost tying you into something,
Right.
which is okay. Like, you need to fulfill those obligations. But at the same time, like, if you continue doing that, your family's going to be picking up pieces of you everywhere
Absolutely.
because
yeah.
it's gonna eventually tear you down. That's where a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, find themselves eventually, is starting a business is way less scary than staying where I'm at.
Yeah.
And what scared you before about starting a business all of a sudden seems very small compared to the level of stress that you're carrying, or
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
staying in this limbo place, which is kind of the vibe I was getting from you just now. Was just like this, like, you kind of have to do something. You can't stay here in this place.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you get to a place where you're like, the next step is either stay and, I mean,
Grind it out.
grind it? Yeah, grind it out, figure something out, or pivot.
Yeah.
And depending on what that pivot is and what you decide that needs to be, is going to make or break
Yeah.
where you go next.
And how you pivot. Because
Yeah, and it almost broke us.
when
It
I
almost
started,
broke me.
yeah, when I started working for you, you were working somewhere else at the time.
That's right. Yep.
And
So
and I remember you were just like, you were almost to that tipping point where, like, we can extricate ourselves from our current situation now because we've got enough clients that we can sustain
yeah.
what we're doing.
Yeah. So then after, like, which kind of brings me to the end of the insurance agony, because it's like, for me, it was torture,
Yeah.
the whole time trying to get somewhere good,
Yeah.
and a lot of the best intentions of trying to get somewhere good is ultimately what it ultimately turns into something that wasn't such a good thing.
Yeah.
So, like, the best of intentions, if they're done improperly, turn into the, I guess, biggest learning lessons you can.
Right?
Real time learning
that's-
lessons.
it's-
But so after selling that, staying for the contract I had with the agency I sold to, man, I just wanted to sit and, like, clock in, do good work for a good company, and just
Relax
regroup
for a minute.
regroup a little bit, and, like, and at that time I really didn't have plans on starting anything else. It was just I need to provide for my family.
Yeah.
I need to do something that is stable, stable income, stable, and was making good money doing it. And then the itch started coming back. And so it's one of those things that, like, I tried to kind of flesh that out a little bit in different ways. And, we had gotten chickens at the time. And so we were trying to figure out how to, or I was, not we, I say we.
Monetize it?
I was trying to figure out how to monetize, like, how many chickens would I have to have and sell eggs
Yeah.
at this, what
Yeah,
does that
yeah.
look like financially? And it's like, it doesn't look good, unless you were on, like, a big scale.
Yeah.
And so, just kept getting more chickens, which was fun. It was
Yeah,
fun. The
yeah,
kids
yeah.
loved it, so we never processed them, never had meat birds or anything like that because the kids couldn't bear, the thought of it all.
Oh, yeah.
So we just ate eggs for a couple of years there.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and then rented our camper out, which we still do. Still
Oh, yeah.
still rent one of the
I didn't
campers.
know that.
One of them we have. Yeah.
Yeah.
So rented that out because we got a camper because we have dogs, and, like, when you travel, what do you do with the dogs? So we wanted somewhere for the dogs, and so we got a camper. We're like, man, we'll put this on outdoorsy. We'll rent it
Yeah.
when we're not using it, and it worked. Like it was a really cool experience.
Oh, that's cool.
So we didn't use it as like we didn't use it every weekend, obviously, but we would use it every couple of months. But I was renting it a couple of times a month, and so other people were using it way more than we were. And so it paid for itself, and like, it was kind of fun to like pretend to have a business, like, because even that takes a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the sitting with somebody going over the paperwork and then teaching them how to use it, and then they take it for a couple of days and then bring it back and having to clean it and having, do all the stuff. It's like, man, there was a cost to that too.
Oh, absolutely.
But it was fun, and it kind of let me kind of scratch the itch of like what was next, and so that was cool, but kind of stumbled into bookkeeping because I wanted to help businesses do what they're doing better.
What made that thought come about?
It's a thought that I had back when I did insurance.
Oh, okay.
And then, I almost went that route into bookkeeping and things, but I think we had met our threshold of adventure. I guess at that point.
So it was a timing.
It was
thing.
very much a timing thing. So we had met our threshold of risk at that point, and so just moving forward was like the only thing that we really could do at that point. So what we wanted to do, like, because
Did you feel like it was something that you were like, we're going to do this, and it was constantly in front of you, or was it kind of something you just kind of, that would be cool, and then stuck it back somewhere, and you're like, we need consistency, we need this, and then you're doing your camper and your chickens and all that, and then all of a sudden it was like coming back to it somehow?
Yeah, I mean, I think the learning curve of like, how do I even get into this? Like, what do I even do? It was what kept me from like taking that step. And I think just wanting to be the best husband that I could be, and not like, I've got so many issues as a husband, but that was one of them that I was like, okay, I've got to set this aside and just, provide for my family. Cause ever since we were pretty early on in marriage, my wife stayed home. And so it's like when we started having kids, like she stayed home with the kids and, is homeschooling now. And, probably as we're speaking, but,
and she helps you with your business too, right?
She does some. Yeah. She does some, kind of as I need to bounce ideas off of that need to have good endings.
Wives are good about that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's like, hey, what do you think about this? So,
you have to be prepared.
Right. It's like, you got to go in like, I accept all outcomes of this, conversation, because it may not be a good idea.
Responsibility for the outcome. I chose to do this.
It's like, asking is me being willing to not do it.
Right.
Because if it's not, so that's always like really good to have that as a sounding board, have her as a sounding board. So kind of keeping that like in the back of my head, a little bit at a time. Like I thought about it a few times, but really it was, a friend of mine called me about an insurance issue, and because I used to write his insurance, he needed help with his workers' comp, and said, hey, the guy I'm working for doesn't, these books are a mess. Like, I don't even know, like what do I need to do here? And I'm like, well, I don't have a license anymore, so I can't really help, but I'll give you the best advice I can. And then, do you think your boss would let me help him with his books?
Interesting.
And so he said, well, I don't know if he would, but I could use some help. And I was like, okay, let's talk, let's see what we can do. Because, coming from business ownership in the past, like I kind of understood the concepts of accounting. And so, I had filed my own taxes a couple of times before too. So I kind of knew like a little bit of that industry. And so, started working with him for, gosh, probably about 7 or 8 months, just with him, learning the software, learning, accounting in general. And so,
Now, what he was in insurance.
no, he was in construction.
He was in construction.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yep. So he was in construction.
Wow, way to start. Ugh. Like I
Yeah.
think of
Well,
all
luckily
all-
he was starting too. And so it was,
Oh, so it wasn't as complicated as if you came in the
wasn't-
middle of a.
it wasn't full blown like I got 10 guys at the job site waiting for me. I've got, whatever. It was like, hey, it's me and a buddy, and we're,
Yeah.
like stepping out, trying to make this thing happen. And so,
Which is basically what happened with me and Lucas when we
Yeah.
came to you. Was
That's right.
the same thing. Like
Yep.
we were literally starting from scratch. We wanted to set things up before we even started.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so, that was
Which I highly recommend.
and that was in May. And then January, I started thinking, man, maybe I should get an LLC. Maybe I should, like really make this a thing instead of just helping a friend of mine on the side.
Right.
And so I just started calling. Just started calling guys that were in that industry because that's what I knew at that point.
Right.
I understood it from writing insurance for construction guys and workers' comp for, landscaping and, builders and all kinds of
Right.
stuff. And so having that experience helped with being able to do the books because I knew what kind of expenses they had. I knew what kind of income they had. I
Right.
understood the model because of sitting with so many of those guys.
Yeah.
And, so just started adding, a couple of clients a month up until the end of 2023, where I think we ended up with about maybe 20 or so.
Yeah.
While I was working full time. And then about February of the next year, it just was getting out of control. And so, you grow to a certain level, you can't really do it on the side anymore.
yeah.
And so I had hired while I was working full time, doing this on the side, hired somebody to be helping me while I was at work, so they were working on my business while I was working on somebody else's, doing stuff in the mornings and at night and like just trying to manage all of it.
So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
Why did you wait so long to switch over?
I just couldn't afford it.
Really?
Yeah.
So even if you hadn't hired somebody and you had maxed out so you were saying that transition from the amount of clients you had to actually being able to flip over to the business full time, you needed to hire somebody to get you to that pivotal point.
Yep.
Okay.
Because if I hadn't hired them, I could so it's, as things grew, it got to a point to where I couldn't really manage all of it on my own.
Part-time, yeah.
Part-time, yeah. And so the thought was, if I hired somebody, I give up some income,
Right.
and yet I buy back some time.
Yeah.
And so as I'm adding more clients, she handles some. My wife's helping me handle a couple of others while she's homeschooling, and we're just doing this thing together. And that means that I can add some more for me to manage.
Right.
And so by the end of that year, kind of beginning January, February, it was to the point to where I couldn't manage both.
Yeah.
Couldn't do both to where people were noticing, to say the least. That people were noticing, and so had to decide what does this mean for us, and so naturally went to the books and said, how much have we grown over the last 6 months, and was it consistent enough to where we can anticipate it staying
Future growth.
consistent,
Yeah.
and if it was consistent enough and we can project into the next 2, 3, 4 months, is this going to be something that sustains us as a family? And so jumped out, and, within 3 months, it was exactly the way that we thought that it was going to go.
Right.
Because we had at least the historical data. So when I started in insurance, it was just from scratch.
Yeah.
Left the company, started with no clients, started with no income at all. And so we had saving, we had money we'd put back. And so just couldn't outrun it. And so this time, at least, it started while I had a pretty good income, where it was like almost with monopoly money, like trying to figure it all out while we were going. And, was able to pull from at least data that says, if you keep going the way that you're going, here's going to be the result.
Yeah.
And so the worst case, I could have went and did something to, replace some of the income, at least get us back where we were at.
Right. But I bet you reached where you were headed much quicker, not being tied down by a job.
I think so.
You were able to beat the bushes better.
100%.
Beat it better. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I could say yes to more opportunities.
Right.
I tried to be as controlled as possible over growth while I was working and trying to build, and because I didn't really know if it was going to be something sustainable at all. I mean, I didn't really have a plan to branch out into being able to do this.
Right.
Because of how big the gap was between how much I was making with those few clients to what I had to overcome to replace my income.
Yeah.
And so that's always the question, is like, how do you bridge that gap? And I think early on that was one of the reasons I never got into real estate, because I really wanted to go into real estate. I wanted to be a realtor so bad, because I just saw in Asheville, I saw the guys that were so successful doing it.
Yeah.
And the problem was that gap between what you're doing to provide for yourself now and then what is going to actually pay the bills. That's a huge gap.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to manage that was a big problem.
Right.
And so, for anybody, when you're starting out. And so, was able to overcome that within about 2 or 3 months, and took what I learned yet again at another company that was really good. Loved the company I worked for. They're really good guys. Still talk to some of the guys, and they're doing great, man. They I was able to see them start from, probably 40 or 50 employees to like over 200 by the time I left.
Wow.
And so it was super cool to see like this growth that they experienced and how they were solving problems, and learned so much while I was there. And they did a really good job, I felt like, trying to figure out the best ways to do that.
Right.
Like within the departments that I was in, one of the books we were talking about, Linchpin, was I play the best role when I'm in between departments, like connecting dots and like really making things, kind of work between one group and another, or one part of the project and another part. And I think that really catered to what I was doing, and obviously caters to entrepreneurship in general, because you kind of get to choose what your role is.
Yeah.
If you're in a construction company, you get to choose, are you going to be project management? Are you going to be sales? Are you going to be CEO over all of them? Or are you going to perform all those jobs?
Right.
And, you get to decide what your role is, which is so cool, because, I'm sure you've heard it, but I mean, if you listen to Dave Ramsey's Entree Leadership, you have guys calling all the time, and his advice is different depending on that person and their business and where they're at in business and what they're actually asking and what problem they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And so entrepreneurship in general, being able to decide what role you play is one of the coolest things, because you don't have to be the guy that's just in front of everybody. Right. Like one of the places we're going is not necessarily like that, but one of the things that I've done is this year, I added somebody to the team that he is customer facing. And so he gets his own clients. I mean, and so I'm helping manage that and helping provide the resources and the insurance and the covering for what he's doing. But then, Alejandro goes and gets his own clients under me. He's involved with the chamber, one of the chambers around Greenville
Oh,
here.
cool.
And so, and I've never been to a chamber meeting where he goes, and so it's like, it's kind of cool,
Yeah.
because I got to decide, like, did I want to play that role, or do I want to, like, how do I scale, like, how
Yeah.
do I scale myself up and my role up
Right.
in this business, and what does that look like?
Right.
And so, we grew so much more during 2024 than we did in 2023, and I think naturally, just because you've been around for a little while, and you get referrals from clients, you end up working with people that you talked to last year, just all kinds of different things, and so we got to a place where we crossed over the six-figure mark, just gross, just as a company,
Yeah.
which was really cool because, like, we're not the CPA firm, like the
Yeah,
traditional
right.
CPA firm that is grossing $1 million a year, but
Right.
we're just doing bookkeeping,
Right.
and we filed some taxes, but we're not trying to grow a tax business. We're
Right.
trying to grow a bookkeeping business that really sits in that consultant type of CFO
Right.
role, a little bit more than just not just hitting send on taxes, but really advising on that
Right.
space.
Giving meaning to data.
Absolutely, yeah, giving
Yeah.
meaning to data, and there's such a need for CPAs
Yeah.
because that data really means something at the end of the year, and understanding, like, how pivotal that role is.
Right.
We could go a couple of ways. We could go the tax route. We could go and scale up the tax side of our business and naturally continue to grow the bookkeeping, or we could go more the CFO route, where we're increasing the bookkeeping naturally, and then we're trying to be the advisor, trying
Right.
to really solve some of the problems on that side.
Yeah.
And helping businesses understand their profit, and
Right.
and when there's an opportunity, because some businesses don't want that necessarily, and others want it, but just depending on the type of relationship, it's try not to overstep,
Yeah,
obviously, but
Yeah.
try to find that middle ground of, like, hey, where can I be helpful and
Yeah.
not overstep. And
I think a lot of people don't realize that a bookkeeper could be more than just somebody who tallies numbers. And I think that's, you talked about overstep, and I think that it looks like overstepping when a bookkeeper starts giving you advice about business. Because people think of a bookkeeper as somebody who you hand numbers to and they just put them in a spreadsheet. And then at the end of the day, that's all they do. And not thinking that someone who is doing that has other skills, because they have this information, they can tell you from experience what you should be doing in order to increase either your bottom line or to create some sort of efficiency within your business. Who better than the person who's looking at those numbers all the time?
right,
And I would say that if you do have a bookkeeper, they should be someone who can act in that function. Like, I would strongly discourage somebody from just hiring someone to tally numbers. If you're going to hire somebody, you might as well hire somebody who can tell you what you need to do with some of these numbers.
yeah,
Because I actually worked for two different people who had bookkeepers, and those bookkeepers' function was just to put numbers in.
yeah,
And I had close relationships, close relationship with one of them, the bookkeeper, where I was interacting with them daily on things. And they were frustrated. Not just because their employer made their job difficult,
yeah,
but because their employer did not care what they thought. And because they saw things that the employer couldn't see or didn't see or chose not to see.
yeah,
And we had the same employer. I was actually in a position to actually confront the employer. I was in that position at the company. But so I understood her frustration very much. That was in a position to actually say something, and I wasn't even listened to on that front.
Right.
And it was incredibly frustrating. But I think having your bookkeeper in a position, or the type of person who's, you can say, what do you think? What do you think about what's going on right now? Where do you think we could, make a difference? What are we actually making money doing? There's the widget example, which is when you start a business, you basically will make any widget for anybody.
Yeah.
And any color widget you'll provide. And eventually you get to a place where you can decide which widget you're going to focus on,
Right.
the one that's most productive. You're making more money on black widgets, and there seems to be a market for it. So you're making enough, you can pivot and just say, this is all I'm going to do are black widgets. And I think within a company, you need that. You need somebody to say, you're making 50% profit on this and only 10% profit on that. And the one you're making 50% profit, you can't scale up because you're busy doing this other thing over here that's only getting 10% profit.
Yeah.
Well, who's going to tell you that? This is part of knowing yourself, right? Is that you have some people who are naturally looking at the books all the time. You're going to run into CEOs who are obsessed with data. Mm-hmm. But you're going to run into some people who hate details.
Yeah.
I work for them, hate details. Give me the bottom line is what they want to hear from you. What's the bottom line? Just tell me what we need to do. Now, they may not do it, but that's the kind of person they are. You have to know if you're that kind of person or not.
Right, and know if they're knowing if they're that kind of person too is kind of what we're kind of where we're going.
Right.
Is to try to free up enough capacity to start to act in that role a little bit more, where we see an opportunity.
Right.
Because like you're saying, we've got a mix of, some people want it, some people don't. Right. Some people want it, but they don't know how to ask, or they've just never really taken it to that level.
Right.
And then others that it's weekly, talking and asking and and things like that. And it's it's cool to see all of those differences, but also how do we do that better?
Right.
How do we take somebody from, I don't care, I just want it done because of taxes and whatever, and take them to a place where it's let's start looking at this a little bit closer.
Right.
Because we've had clients on both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a super important part of anyone's business. And I think, we're going to have a lot of solopreneurs that are going to be watching this, and they're going, well, I have a very small business and I'm fine, whatever. But I think even there, you'll find that if you're using a bookkeeper who has a certain level of skills, having a bookkeeper is not that expensive when you consider all the things that they're doing for you. If you're meeting with them anyway, you might as well be getting advice from them.
Yeah.
And my thing is that, when we're running small businesses, and both of us, our businesses are still considered small. Some people may be looking at our numbers and thinking, wow, you're a huge business. But anything under $10 million, really $50 million is considered small business. And ours aren't anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
Not anywhere close.
Probably never will be.
Yeah.
By
Who
design.
knows?
By design we'll never be there. Because I've got a number of, hey, this is probably the top. This is probably as big as I would like to get.
Yeah.
Because, like you were saying, the people that have those small businesses saying, hey, I'm fine. I'm happy. You
Yeah.
know, everything's good. I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, there is no right or wrong answer to like how big or how much profit or how much revenue or whatever. I mean, it's really like, because if, like one of the things we were talking about before we started this was, if like you were saying, if money, and I'm going to let you explain it, but if money is the motivating factor, then it's going to fall so much short
Yeah.
of where you need to be,
Yeah.
or want to be, or
Yeah.
get or happy with it. So
What I always
say
say
it
is
better.
that money is a metric.
Yes.
It's not a reason. And so it's not a reason for why you're doing what you're doing. It measures the success of what you're doing to an extent. Is what I'm doing even viable? Well,
Right.
yes, it is. Because it's producing a metric called currency. And so I've got nothing against people who want to make money. I mean, I don't want to lose money,
Absolutely.
for sure. I'm not necessarily out here trying to become the next billionaire at all. I don't think I have that capacity anyway. Like, I think that my personality and my makeup wouldn't probably let me get there unless I could play a very specific role within a company. I mean, very specific.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
there's
don't.
a cost to getting there too,
Oh, it's a huge cost.
which is
Huge.
fine if you're willing to pay it, and
Yeah.
that's great. If you want to get there, great. There are ways to do that, and there are smart ways and there are not
Yeah.
smart ways to do that.
So it's interesting
but-
because billionaires will often say there's no such thing as a life work balance. And I've heard that more recently from billionaires we would recognize and from very successful multi-millionaires. They're in the hundreds of millions, probably reaching $1 billion. And they would say, really, to get to that place, you're going to have to sacrifice work-life balance. And I
well,
think
to get there quickly, to get there.
well, I think get
fat-
there quickly, but I think if you were to look at the billionaires in the world right now, you would see that even those who worked their way there struggled with work-life balance. Like, they don't sleep regular hours. Their family suffers. And maybe in media it doesn't look that way, but it certainly shows in the long run. And it's tough to do that. And the people who actually do it well, these are high-level managers, very compartmentalized. It's a rare person. And I think that's one thing that I envision for what we're doing here is people need to look at what they're doing very realistically. Not necessarily in a negative sense. Like, I don't want people to leave our podcast in a pessimist.
Sure.
I want them to say, okay, what's the reality?
Yeah.
I
Kind of
don't
just
want to
take a breath, like just
Yeah.
breathe out. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay.
It's okay.
Like
And
where
if
you're
you-
at and where you want to go is
Exactly.
okay.
And you can take steps. And really, to achieve anything, it's a series of small steps. If you were to go online and search business courses, you would find thousands of people saying that you could do such and such overnight. And that's just not the case. And the people that that's happened for, and not the people doing these courses necessarily, but the people that has happened for, it was a fluke.
Right.
It,
Extremely, yeah, super
it
rare.
was like
Yeah.
they didn't even believe anything would come of it.
Right.
I mean, you look at Bezos. He was like, I had this idea. I really wanted to do this. I thought it would do well.
Yeah.
Did he know that he'd be worth 300 and some $billion?
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
a few years later.
Right.
No, he didn't.
Well, that and like, you know, if you were to do exactly what he did, it wouldn't be what it was for him.
No.
Because at that time,
It
was
was-
a pivotal moment in technology and
Absolutely.
the internet space and
Yeah.
computers and where they were
Right.
at. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not the kind of millennial to like I'm not the technology millennial,
Yeah, yeah, right,
but
right.
but it was at a specific time in history
Right.
where it worked because it was
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
which is great. But on the flip side of that, the way Dave Ramsey talks is, after 25 years, we're an overnight success because nobody saw the first 15 years.
Right,
No,
exactly. Where
no,
he
like,
was being
and well, people
successful.
did, but like, it wasn't
It
what it
wasn't
is
what it is.
now.
Yeah, exactly.
For the past decade or
Yeah,
more, 10 or 15 years or so, it wasn't what it is today.
exactly.
And not seeing the steps that it took to get there and the making just the next right move, and I listen to so many of their podcasts, but like the way John Deloney talks about,
Yeah.
like, what's the next right move?
Right.
Well, in business, what's the next right move that's going to move the needle either financially or management
Yep.
related or freedom or like what's going to make, like, what
Right.
is that next step? What does that
Right.
next step look like?
It's not a
And
gold nugget either. And I think
exactly.
that's the thing we need to get over. I think in all the business coaching that I've done, it is having to take the notion away from people that it's this big golden nugget. They're looking for the next big thing.
Right.
And sometimes it's saying, okay, tell me where you want to go, but then here are the next few steps. Like they want to jump from here to there. And, in the service industry, I owned a piano tech company for years. And in that industry, it's easy to see some of the big ticket items and being like, I need to ramp that up. But that business comes from networking, and networking takes time, and it's getting to know the right people at the right time. And so in the meantime, you have to make a living. And actually, even to do these big ticket items, you have to have a certain shop space. You have to have all these things, and you're like, so am I going to take out a $200,000 loan in order to outfit a shop?
Right. For something you want to do but aren't necessarily
Yeah, in the
doing
mean,
yet. And what, like, is that even going to work?
yeah, is that even going to work?
Yeah.
And I've seen guys do it, and I've talked people down off a cliff from doing that, where they're like, I have this one opportunity, and I don't want to let it go. And this is another thing, and you've heard me say this before, and that is if that is the last opportunity, you're in the wrong business. Like,
Right.
if you're an optimist and you tell yourself, when is this ever going to come across my path again? And that is why you want to make that decision, you're in the wrong business. You should be seeing opportunities everywhere if you want to go solo in a business.
Yeah. And some are going to be better than others, and some
Right.
are going to be more, lucrative than others. You're going to make a higher profit on maybe this one,
Right.
And it'd be great to get it. And if you don't, it's going to be disappointing.
But
then,
timing's everything.
But then there's going to be another one here and another one
Right.
there. I mean, and
Right.
yeah,
And timing, it's all about timing. It's like, yeah, you could, but here are the things you're going to put yourself at risk taking this job to the extent that if you don't get the next one,
Right.
you're going to be out big time.
yeah,
And you may have to liquidate and pack up and go work for another company. And for me, that's the thing is these golden nuggets. You got to get that out of your head and say, okay, I'm going to put a penny down here, and I'm going to put a penny down there. I'm going to find out what part of my business is cost me the least to produce and is the most marketable.
right, exactly.
And I'm going to focus on that thing. And when that thing is running really, really well, I mean, you did this in your business. When that thing is jiving and going well and it's self-sustainable, then I can take the next step towards that golden nugget.
Yeah, how do you do that just a little bit better?
Right.
And how do you double down on it to where
Right.
maybe that, not that becomes your thing, but
Right.
necessarily, but like how do you capitalize on
Right.
that opportunity? Because if it's profitable,
Right.
if it's going well, if you can tweak it
Right.
and manage it in a way that's going to improve the experience of the customer or client or whatever you want to say, if you're going to improve that experience and make it more profitable and make it a better opportunity for your business, I mean, that's a
Right.
no-brainer. I
Right.
mean, and it's far less about these, 3 or 4 good decisions, but it's 1,000 good decisions
Right.
that will lead up to where success is, whether it's
Exactly.
financial
Yeah.
or, freedom. That's one of the things we talk about a lot now is, I never imagined we would be where we are, and we still have a lot to go.
Yeah.
But now it's like, you know, our expenses are more than what I used to make.
Yeah.
And so like as you scale, like those things are going to happen, but it's like, man, how do I free, like what does freedom look like?
Yeah.
And what does the finish line look like for our family?
Yeah.
And that's not going to be the same for everybody.
Yeah.
And if that's multi-millions, if that's I just want to be able to run what I'm doing well and efficiently and be able to spend time with my family and clock out at 5, then that's great. I mean, like,
But it's the same steps to get there.
yeah,
Whether you're reaching for hundreds of millions of dollars or even billions of dollars, or whether you're just reaching far enough to have a certain level of security and
that's right.
raise your family and relax, they're the same steps. You make goals, you recognize the next step towards that goal, you nail that sucker down,
Yeah,
and
that's
then you
right.
go to the next one.
Absolutely.
You don't skip them. You don't try to dodge past them. You go through each one, and if it's interesting to me because this has been something that I learned very young. I started a piano tech business when I was 20 years old. I'd gone to piano tech company, and there's a whole story before that, but it doesn't really matter.
Did
I
you say a
went
piano tech?
I went to a piano tech school.
Okay. What is piano tech?
A piano technician is a
Oh, like
tuner.
piano
Yeah,
technician.
yeah,
Okay.
working on
Sorry,
pianos
I thought it was a brand or like
Yeah.
a. Okay.
So there's a whole way of getting there that I could tell that whole backstory. Maybe
Okay.
that's for another time.
Sorry,
But
excuse
we're
my ignorance.
we're in a musical family, and we had technicians on all the time. And the blind technician, older fella that used to do it, couldn't come for some reason, so we hired this other guy who worked for a local music company, and he was 36 years old. He was young, and like I'd never seen a young piano technician ever. And I think I think probably a year from going to school. I think I was a senior in high school, and I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I kind of thought it was music, wasn't really sure, but then it was like I grew up in a pastor's home in the Midwest, small church. My parents didn't have any money. I was gonna have to pay for my own school. And so it was kind of like, how am I going to do this? On top of that, I wasn't good at school. I did fine in high school, but like school was not my thing. And so I was trying to figure out what to do. And through this young guy, I was like, wow, he's young and he can tune. And I had a really good ear. I thought, well, maybe I'd be good at that too. I saw what he made that day. And I thought, well, that's not bad for an hour's or an hour and a half worth of work. So I started asking him a lot of questions, how he got to where he was, what he was doing, and he was like giving me some advice. But then he said, "Hey, let me connect you with the head technician at the University of Iowa." Ended up spending the day with him. He took me out to lunch. We talked for a while, and he's like, "Listen, if you really want to get into this, Micah, I think you should go to piano tech school, and there's one in Chicago. It's really great. You can go there on the weekends and do school." And I was like, go to school to learn a trade to go to school did not sound very appetizing to me.
Yeah.
I was like, I hated school enough. I didn't really want to put it off.
How do I get there and not do that?
Yeah. I was like, great. But my parents were like, you should go check it out. Just, nobody's making you go. So I went up there and checked it out, and it was really cool. It was really, of course, it was very hands-on. we weren't taking English and math.
Right.
We were taking wood, a class on the biology of wood,
Oh wow.
and we were taking classes on piano repair. And
So is that more of like a, I guess you would call like a certificate or like a?
yes,
Okay, cool. Okay.
and
You weren't there for 2 years. I mean, it was.
no, I was there for 12 months.
Yeah. Okay.
So the closest thing you would get to is an associate's degree without
Oh, the core classes. And
any of
that
the
kind
core
stuff.
classes.
Gotcha.
Just focused on what we were doing. It's a technical school, and so we were doing. It was great, and I was like, okay, this is what I'll do. Went there. My parents paid for that year of school, which was fantastic of them, and I was 19, which is crazy, and I got out, and the best thing about it was that what they told us is when you leave here, you have about 4 years worth of experience. If you had started from scratch
Oh wow.
and went and worked for another technician, it would take you about 4 years to get here. The reality was that when I got out of there and I went to the PTG meetings, Piano Tech Guild meetings, and there was the age range was I would have been the youngest.
By far, probably.
Oh
or-
yeah, by far,
Yeah.
by far. The average age at that time of technician was 55.
Okay.
The oldest being in their 80s, and I'm talking to a 50-year-old, 50-something-year-old who has 30 years of experience almost, and he doesn't have a clue what he's doing.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I'm saying that now with somebody who's got 20 years experience.
Right.
Like I know what was happening at that point.
Yeah.
And looking back was that school set me on a path of great success, with way more knowledge than they even thought they had given me. And I
Gotcha.
figured that out by working with experienced technicians.
Yeah. And kind of
And-
being in that community. a
And
little
on
bit
top
like
of that, having a natural skill for figuring problems, for problem solving
Yeah.
and diagnostics. I have a natural knack for that.
Yeah, because you kind of either have that or you don't have
Yeah,
that. You kind
so-
of either naturally work that way.
Yeah.
And you can't look around at things without thinking deeper
Right.
than what they are, or you kind of have to force yourself.
So you
into
can train people that. I trained a guy in piano tech, and he was excellent student. Like, I met him in college actually, and he's like one of those people. He did 3 master's degree at the same time. It's like brilliant.
Wow.
But that was significantly memory, not practical, like application type of brain. That's somebody who can retain information, regurgitate information very, very well. And I say that he was brilliant. But I had to teach him how to problem solve.
Gotcha.
And I would say if he could learn how to problem solve, anybody could learn it. And there are steps to doing that. I had to take away kind of a rubric or a bullet point from him, because that's the way he would go about it. He's really good at school. So his way of dealing with school is, here's this list of stuff, and I match it against the answer. If it doesn't match up, it's not the right answer. And I go through it. I mean, it's all in his head. And when he comes where they match, he goes together. Well, he would do that with problem solving. And I would be like, that's way too slow. You can't just go through every single part in the piano
Right.
and say, is it this? Nope. Is it this? Nope. You got to be
kind
able
of
to
like
say,
following a checklist.
yeah,
Of,
you have to
yeah.
find the problem and work backwards to get to solving a problem.
Yeah, kind of understand like, okay, if it's having this problem, well, there are only a number of reasons why it's having that problem, but it's
Right.
following it to
Right.
to the root of like what actually caused that problem
Right.
to begin with.
So between going to school, piano tech school, and having incredible teachers, an incredible school, and having a natural inclination to that, I did very well in piano tech. Within a year of being out of that, I had already started my own business, and I had a piano rebuilder in the area who did pretty decent rebuilds hire me. And within his business, I was foreman. I was his only employee when he first hired me. I started messing with the different things we were doing. In my time being there, we went from just like replacing piano action and refinishing and stuff like that, and fixing cracks in soundboards to building our own soundboards, which is a big deal in that industry. And I did that for 8 years. It's interesting when I think back. I'm like, 8 years does not sound like that long,
Yeah.
but it feels like I was there longer than that. But enjoyed that, and then I decided I was going to go back to college, or no, that I had worked there for a while, and then I was like, I'm going to do some college. So I actually came down here and did a year of college, and did psychology. Actually, really enjoy psychology, but didn't enjoy school.
Oh, gotcha.
And ran out of money. And so I was like, oh, maybe this isn't for me. Went back, worked for the shop, was still kind of building my business there. Not actively, like it was basically people, friends of friends would call me.
Okay, gotcha.
Very word of
So
mouth.
you weren't like moonlighting necessarily.
Yeah,
Like
so
on your own. You were working for a guy, but also doing it on the side
Yeah.
as somebody needs it.
well, the
you know,
guy I
kind
was
of
working
situation.
for wasn't in the servicing industry. He was doing just rebuilding.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So I was
then
in,
when there was an opportunity for servicing,
I was
okay.
doing servicing work in the area, and I was doing it on the after hours. And this is, we're going to talk a lot probably about side gigging and stuff like that and how to transition. But I was just doing that in the evenings. There came a point where I had so much work. I was filling Saturday and filling my evenings. And at some point I came to my boss and said, hey, look, I am kind of maxed out here. I need another day. And I would say this is something that I often tell people, because if you're ever on the business end of a business, you know that there's a point at which keeping someone part-time is more valuable than letting them go and trying to hire somebody else and spending all the money you spend to hire someone.
Right.
And I think a lot of business owners are sometimes short-sighted in that they're like, oh, this person's on their way out. So, no, actually, I'm not going to keep you on. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to hire somebody else. Well,
Yeah, because it's appropriate
Right.
situations for both of those.
so I was talking to, this is after this rebuilder had gotten a bookkeeper. So he actually had a little bit of data. He told me one time that he thought that a new employee cost him between $35,000 and $45,000
Wow.
in loss in productivity, doubling up on labor. So somebody's got to teach that person.
Right.
So now one job is taking up two man labor hours.
Right. Yeah.
And so he was talking about how much he thought it cost him. I was like, wow. Later, I read a statistic that was pretty consistent to that, where when you hire somebody on, you lose a certain amount of money hiring somebody.
Yeah. I mean, outside of just the upfront costs.
Right. So I made this transition of working for myself by just saying, if I work some extra hours during the week, can I have Friday, all day Friday? And extra hours for me was just working earlier in the morning.
Right.
So I would get to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, work till 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, go do 2 tunings, and then be done for the day. Now I was single, so I had no responsibilities. And my parents, I had no responsibility to my parents. I was living with them at the time.
Yeah.
So I was in a great spot.
Yeah.
A better spot than most people when they're trying to do that sort of thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a certain envy of,
Yeah.
Somebody like starting
Right.
early on like
Yeah.
that, because it's like you can do almost whatever
Yeah,
you
you
can
can.
start 3 businesses.
But I
do
will
whatever
say-
you want almost.
I will say what young people don't have and they need to consider is drive. Like, you have energy, but to spend from 3 to 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening doing your side
Yeah,
gig
gotcha.
and not
Not the
partying.
drive to want to be successful, but the drive to put in the hours that it takes to get there.
Well, and not
Or
do the things that are temporal. So,
okay, I got
I
you.
had friends, I had people that were going and watching games at each other's houses and,
Okay,
and
yeah.
doing stuff like that, and I did some of that. But you have to remember that if you're on a journey to do something, you can't just be like, I'm going to have my cake and eat it too.
Right. It's almost like every yes is a no. So
Exactly.
everything you say yes to, on the other side,
Yeah.
you're saying no to something else.
And that's a
And so, like,
universal truth.
exactly, yeah.
It's not just in this, what I'm talking about right now, which is kind of transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
If you own a business and you're working full time in a business, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else.
Right.
Now, the ideal position to be in is that if you say yes to a thing, one of your employees is saying yes to the thing you're saying no to.
Right.
Okay, so you're
exactly.
doubling up your efforts.
Once you get to that
Right.
to that level.
But
yeah.
when you're young,
Well, and I'm sorry. And
No, go
depending on the industry, like that happens at different stages.
right,
And so, I mean, I have clients that they have to rely on employees from day one,
yeah,
either whether that's 1099 or W-2.
Right.
And then I have other clients and even myself that, well, like the industry I'm in, I don't have to rely on any employees at all.
Exactly.
You know, it can be ran as a one-man shop
Yeah.
to a certain point.
Right.
And I've seen anomalies where the people that have significantly more clients than I do running it themselves, and yet I don't understand that,
Yeah.
you know, because of, you know, the workload and stuff.
Right.
But then there are also accounting firms or bookkeeping firms or whatever that have significantly less clients, and they relied on employees
Yeah.
really, really early.
yeah,
And depending on what that looks like for each industry
Yeah.
and each person and revenues and, you know,
Yep.
whether your spouse works or they don't
Yep.
work, I mean, all of those things are significant to, you know, when that has to be the
Right,
case. But
right.
carry on.
and that is that takes a lot of wisdom. I think, and this is one thing that I did not do well early on, is get advice. I am a self-made man, and I was proud of that. The problem is that only gets you so far. Like at some point,
Yeah.
you need outside wisdom, and I would say the earlier you learn to humble yourself and get advice from people, the faster you're going to grow.
Right.
Now,
and
you
kind
gotta
of
get it from
find
the
your
right place.
community.
Yeah.
Find a community within what you do.
Yeah.
Or at least like pretty similar to what
Right.
you do enough to where you can say, hey, here's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I've found, you know, 2 or 3 guys in the bookkeeping world that like they don't do taxes, they just do the bookkeeping. And so that's where we came from.
Yeah.
And so finding them and saying, hey, here's where I'm at. You know, you're not competition. We're in this together.
Yeah.
Like, I need to be able to tell you where I'm at and be able to kind of get
Right.
some feedback here.
Yeah.
You know, and it's been difficult to find firms, just bookkeeping firms that are our size, because you either have the side gig or the side hustle or the, hey, I don't really want to take any more clients because I have kids and my husband works and, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Predominantly, you know, female industry,
Right.
and there's not there's not a large amount that have like scaled yet.
Yeah.
But there are some guys that I know that I can like communicate with pretty often that are on their way. You
Right.
know, that are like a year or two behind us.
Yeah.
You know, that it's like, man, if you just keep going, this is where you're gonna get.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so like we'll meet up and like, you know, I'll kind of say, man, it's like I can scale down and be back a little bit, you know, simpler, or I could scale up and get more off my plate and then,
Right.
you know, really increase the experience that
Yeah.
clients have
Yeah.
and, you know, things like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
man, which one's right?
Yeah.
You know, so
That's why we have wives.
yeah, whoever finds a
tell you-
wife finds a good thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Scripture was correct.
So anyway,